I would like to give the screen or the floor to our District Rotary Foundation Chair, District Trainer, Representative for Council on Legislation, all for 2021, and the immediate past District Governor, Terry Mathias.
Well, thanks, Sean, and good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see so many of you on the call this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. We have a lot of stuff lined up for you today, hopefully to be really helpful as you start the new Rotary year. I would ask that you please put yourself on mute so we don't have any background noise during the presentation, and then I will address any questions at the end of the presentation just to kind of keep the continuity of the presentation going. So if you could put yourself on mute. The first presentation this morning, we're going to talk about just the process of district grants and how they all work, and then that will get your club certified to participate in a district grant if your club is represented this first hour. The second hour, we will actually step you through the process, show you the forms, just go over them at a high level, and help you understand the process of actually the nuts and bolts of filling out the forms and submitting your applications and the documentation we need to process your district grant. So with that said, Sean, if you could share your screen and put up the presentation, that would be wonderful. Okay, so as I already said, this is the hour you have to be here to get certified for district grants. So let me just kind of walk you through the certification training this morning. It's pretty straightforward. There have only been a couple significant changes from the way we did things last year, and I will highlight those as I go through the process. And then, like I said, at the end, I can answer any questions any of you may have. Next slide, Sean. So first thing I want to do is introduce our grant committee for this coming year for 2021. Cynthia Colson, who is from Tucker County Rotary, she will be our chair for the district grant committee. And then the rest of the members of the district grant committee are listed there. Jeff DeCibio from the Princeton Rotary Club, Julie Sawyer from the Fairmont Rotary Club, and John Lee from the Barbersville Rotary Club. Those will be the 4 people serving on the district grant committee this year to help you process your grants as quickly and as efficiently as possible so you can kind of make a difference that you need to do in your community. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so one thing that I think most of you are aware of, and if you are not, your district grant has to fall in line with one of the 6 areas of focus of Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. If you're not sure what they are, they're right there on the screen for you. Basic education and literacy, disease prevention and treatment, water, sanitation and hygiene, maternal and child health, community economic development, and peace and conflict resolution. Those are the 6 areas of focus that your grant has to fall within. Pretty much everything you guys do will fall into one of those. If you're not sure or how to make it line up, please reach out to the grant committee and they will kind of help you and guide you to make sure that it falls in one of those areas. And the first major change, which just happened yesterday, and it's so new, it's not on the screen, is the trustees of the Rotary Foundation actually added a 7th area of focus, and that area of focus is supporting the environment. That's all we know right now. So we will get more information out to you as they tell us more. So there are actually now 7 areas of focus and the 7th supporting the environment. Next slide, Sean. Okay, so this process is the same as it was last year. It's a reimbursement grant. That's the way the district grant program works. You apply for the grant, you apply for the grant, you spend the money, and then you get reimbursed on the back end. There is one exception. So this is the 2nd major change this year, and I want to spend a little time on this because this is important. For this year only, the Rotary Foundation has granted an exception that you can actually be reimbursed for grants for projects you've already done if they're related to COVID-19. So for this year only, if you've done any COVID-19 projects after March 15th, you can actually apply for a district grant and then get reimbursed for those grants that you've already done. So that's the only exception, and that's only for this Rotary year. I know a lot of our clubs have been doing different things, helping their communities with COVID-19, whether it's feeding people, providing supplies, different kinds of relief efforts. So this year, you can actually go back to anything you've done after March 15th and go ahead and apply for a district grant. So like I said, that's the only exception that's new this year. And we will get more information out to you guys once they give us more information. But that's kind of what we know right now. So if you've done, say you fed some people in April, and all you have to do is apply for the district grant, give us your receipts and everything. And even though it's not been approved, it will get approved because it's COVID-19. So with that exception in mind, just remember that you do have to apply for the grant first, except for COVID-19. And then once you've been approved and you spend the money, then you get reimbursed. And it is a 50% reimbursement after the fact. So showing you an example there. So say you want to give out 2 $1,000 scholarships. You apply for a district grant. You give out those 2 $1,000 scholarships. And then once you've cut those checks and given the money out to your winners, then you submit your final report, and then we give you $1,000 back. So at the end of the day, you spend $1,000 and the district spends $1,000. So that's the way the process works. It's pretty straightforward. Just remember that you must wait to get approved before you spend the money, because there's no guarantee it'll be approved if you don't. Okay, so moving on to the projected amount that we have, and this is a projected amount. I'm waiting for the exact amount from Rotary International as far as how much money we have available for district grants. The last couple of years, they've given us a little bit more than 50% of our DDF that's available. So I'm waiting for an exact calculation, and we will let you guys know that, but it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $41,000. I don't know how many clubs are on here. I know there's 58 people, but we have multiple representatives from several clubs. But just say for the sake of argument, there's 41 clubs represented here this morning, then each club would be eligible for about $1,000 on the district grant. So that's kind of how that works. We try to give everyone an opportunity to make a difference in their communities. And so we try to make everyone have some funds available to them. Okay, the third big change is right there in bold. The change is the deadline for our application. Last year it was October 15th. This year it's August 15th. Did that for several reasons. One, the people that have been doing COVID-19 relief, we want to get your money back to you as soon as we can. So we moved it back to August 15th. And then the other thing that does is for people that want to do projects in September, you know, because you're gearing up in July and August, but for those of you who want to do projects later in August and September, this gives you an opportunity to get some refunds, some funding help from the district to do those things. This year, we actually had 2 grant cycles. We had, I forget exactly how many people apply the first go round. We had funds left over, so we did a second round at the end of the year. So depending on how the first round goes this year, we may have a second round again next year. And that's just, you know, we'll just see how that works as we work through the year.
Harry, if I may, I'd like to throw something in on top of that if I could.
Okay.
Just from a district coffer standpoint, obviously there were a lot of things that were budgeted for 2019, 2020 that didn't get to happen because of the coronavirus pandemic. So there's been a certain amount of savings take place in 2019 and 20. Also with the forecasted budget for 2020-21, we may find ourselves unable to carry out all the events that we have budgeted there. I don't know what that surplusage will mean, but I know that there's been some discussion among some of the district folks and the clubs as well, that could lead to more funding. So while I'm not trying to commit to anything, because one, I'm not the person that can commit to it, certainly not by myself, certainly not without a discussion of the finance committee and other individuals as well. But there may be an opportunity for there to be additional grant money's been made available. But for purposes of today's discussion, for sure, what you're seeing is the least amount that we're going to be able to make available to everybody throughout the year.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. And as Sean said, that will be a totally separate entity from this. This is the foundation money that will be coming directly from the district coffers. So if the finance committee decides that there's money available, then they would kind of run that program. The finance committee would, and then we figure out a process to allocate those funds. So that's just something to think about or keep in the back of your head going forward. Okay, thanks, Sean. Next slide. Okay, so this is a simple 5-step process. I try to keep this as simple as you can because it's really, some people get intimidated, oh, it's too much work to apply for a district grant, and it really isn't. It's a simple 5-step process, and we really want to encourage all the clubs to participate. Okay, so step 1, next slide, Sean. Okay, it's kind of obvious. You just fill out the application. You complete the grant application and the signed MOU. Those forms are available on the district website. The next session will show you where to find those. But you have to complete an application and the MOU, and then you submit it to the district grant committee by August 15th for the first round. Okay, next slide, Sean. Okay, this is important. Don't go out and do your grant just because you've submitted the application. It has to be approved. Your grant application gets reviewed by district grant committee, and then it gets submitted for Rotary International for final approval. So it may be a project that doesn't line up with what the foundation can be used for, and you will be notified of that if that's the case. Generally, we don't have any problems with this. Sometimes we have clubs that do things that fall outside of the purview of some of the areas. So it's important to wait to do your project so that you know it's approved and you know you're going to get that reimbursement. Once you are approved, the grant committee will let you know of that approval so you can go ahead and proceed with your project. Okay, next slide.
Hey, Terry, you have a question in the queue.
Okay, we'll get to those at the end, Jeff. We're going to hold off and answer them at the end. Thanks. Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, step 3. Once your grant's been approved, you go ahead and complete the project. You spend your funds, you get your project completed, and whatever it is that you need to do to accomplish your goals for that project. And then step 4, obviously after you complete the project, you have to complete the final report, and you submit that to the district grant committee. That final report is also located on the website, and you'll be able to pull that report. And actually that one you can fill out right on the website and then attach your documentation of all your expenses and submit it. So it is important to keep track of your spending, because when that final report is due, the grant committee needs to see how you spend the funds. So that's a critical aspect that you need to remember, is as you spend your funds and whatever project is that you're doing, just keep track of all of that stuff, and then that way you can submit it with your final report at the end of the day. But I did see something pop up about these slides being available, and yes, they will be available. We'll probably try to put them on the website somewhere, but we can also get them out to you guys as well if you're on this call this morning. And then once your final report and documentation is approved, you'll get whatever you requested within, a certain range of the project that you submitted. And that's flexible because it depends on how many grants are submitted and what your final expenses are, because in some cases they may be less than you submitted. In some cases they may be more than what you submitted. And so the district grant committee can work with you and try to balance that out based on all of the projects that are submitted. So that'll happen after you submit the final report. Okay. Big thing to remember about district grants, and the big thing to remember really as Rotarians is, I think you're all on this call, and I hope you're all Rotarians because you want to change your community. And what the district grants do is provide you a vehicle to do that. We help you with funding, and we help you to be able to make differences in your community. The district grants are the smaller grants that we just talked about, usually in the couple $1,000 range. But there's also global grants that are available to you. And if you're interested in a global grant, just reach out to me and I can give you a lot more information. A global grant starts at $30,000. That's the minimum expense that you can use to apply for a global grant. And you also do need an international partner. But don't get misled by the term global grant. That's just a name of a category. Global grants can be used to make a difference in West Virginia. So if you have a big project that you want to do, so like I said, please reach out to me. I offered last year and nobody did, but I would hope that someone reaches out to me this year, because I think we have about $20,000 of funding available for global grants that's carrying over from this year and we will be adding more to that next year. So think about something big. Don't be afraid. There's a little more work involved, but it's a great opportunity to make a difference in your community. When I was governor, I wrote a global grant to do dental care for children in West Virginia. And we were almost ready to execute that grant in March until COVID-19 happened. So now that's been on hold, but we will probably be going into at least 1 or 2 schools in Wayne County in the fall to do some dental care for children that are not getting dental care. So that's the kind of thing that you can do to make a difference in West Virginia. Okay, so Sean, you want to go through the questions, if you don't mind?
Absolutely, Terry.
Okay.
The first one that I saw was about the emailing and copy the PowerPoint. I'll be glad to do that for anybody that asks. Carol asked the question, but if you're interested in that, just either shoot me an email or try to get on the chat here today before we leave, and I'll be glad to send you a copy of that. The next question is from Jenny, Terry. It says, if it goes to the second round, do the same rules as far as getting approval prior to the project apply?
Yeah, because the way the district grant system is set up, the project has to be executed during the time of the grant process. So you want to make sure that the grant is approved before you actually do it.
And I can, this past year, we had a second round and there were new dates established for the application deadlines and the final reporting. And I'm sure that's something that'll get posted again or circulated throughout the district, either on the website or by email or something. Is that fair to assume, Terry?
Right, yeah, we'll communicate all that out to you guys. Hopefully we spend in the first round. That's the idea, is to give everyone an opportunity to get your projects rolling early and, make the difference you need to. If we have leftover funds, then we do a second round so that you can, put those funds towards a project later in the year.
Okay. John Bolt's got a question from Morgantown. If a project is more than $2,000, is it safe to presume that the reimbursement will still be limited to $1,000?
Approximately. I mean, like I said earlier, it really depends on how many clubs and how many clubs we have certified and the scope of those projects. Some clubs may only want $500 reimbursement because it's a smaller project. But always just keep in mind a rule of thumb that you're going to get around $1,000 that first round, and that may fluctuate, like I said, depending on all of the other applications that are submitted to the committee.
Terry, would you like me to step in here too?
Sure, if you want to elucidate that a little bit, you can, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we treat it as the first round is the cap of $1,000, which I think Terry just said. So we try to be very cognizant of the fact that some people have grants that are way in excess of the $2,000 first expenditures to get the $1,000 amount back. So if we have excess funds at the end, and we don't have the number of clubs who are participating the second round so that we can be equitable, then we try to go back and revisit the ones who had substantial projects that we can go ahead and give them additional funding after the fact, if possible. We try to be as equitable to everybody as can. We want to give everyone an equal bite at the apple the first time around, and if they're unable to get a project request in the first time, we like to review theirs first, the second go round, if we have funding available for a second go round.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I hope that's helpful because it is a kind of a fluid thing. But just keep in mind when you apply for your first grant, you're going to get about 1,000. That's just a good rule of thumb, to follow.
Okay, next question comes from Jane. I presume that is Jane Stout. It says, what will the deadline be for final reporting for the first round?
Well, your final report should be in about a month after you complete your project. That's the rule of thumb. I mean, at the end of the day, no later than I think the end of May,
Yep.
But get it done as soon as you can. And then that way you get reimbursed. I mean, that's the thing is like people think that, oh, well, I'll just wait. But it's like the sooner you finish your project and submit the final report, the sooner we can reimburse you.
Okay.
Right.
There have been several people ask for the copies of the PowerPoint, and I'll just answer everybody at the same time. I'm writing down the list of people that are asking for it, and I will make sure that everybody that asks gets one. Jim
We can put it
Culberson.
on the website too, somewhere, I think, can't we, Bonnie?
Put the
Pardon?
PowerPoint.
Bonnie, could we put the PowerPoint on the website somewhere for people to look
Oh,
at?
sure, yes.
Okay,
Just get it to Mark and we'll do that.
I'm going to make a couple of changes by adding that 7th area of focus, and
okay,
I'll update it, and Bonnie, I'll send it to you myself.
Okay.
Thank
Sean,
you.
if you
so-
want to push it out to the AGs, we can share it from there too.
Okay, great. Make note of that as well. Jim Culberson has a question, and it says, quick summary of last year's grants. Are they all reimbursed and finished?
can someone on the grant committee address that? Because I know they're in process right now. I know that they're being worked on.
We're keeping a list on the website. However, it is, you can only get into the list via password. And we sent that link and the password to the grants committee members a couple weeks ago. But from what I can see here, and also too, those are the final reports that went through the online process. If someone actually mailed one into you, then we would not have that information. But according to what we have on the list, there are 6 outstanding for 2019. That would be the round 1. And then 10 outstanding for the second round. But the deadline for second round is June 30. So folks still have time to meet that deadline.
I had one come in yesterday.
So it would be nice if someone from the grants committee could let us know if any final report actually came through the mail and did not go through the online process. And then we could
Bonnie,
get,
those would have to go to John Powell. He's the one that's listed with the address. The rest of us aren't getting those. He's disseminating that once he obtains it personally.
okay, well, that's just what we know.
Great. John Basil's got a question that says, if we apply for 2 grants, should we submit one as primary and one as secondary?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to submit 2 up front, you're welcome to do that. And then, one will be considered first round and one, considered second round. That'd be okay.
Okay. Jim Culberson has got what I think is a great question, and I hope that I get the answer that's in the back of my mind. Can we do multi-club projects with these grants?
Of course you can. I mean, as long as each club submits, whatever part of it that they're paying for, that's not a problem to do a multi-club grant. I mean, each club can get, up to $1,000 back. So if you have, say you have 5 clubs doing a $10,000 project, they each get $1,000 and get half of it back. So yeah, you can definitely do that.
Okay. Let me filter through some of these requests for a copy. That might be all the questions in the queue.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to ask of Terry or Jeff, or as it relates to the website and being made globally available to everyone?
Do we have any other outstanding or pending global grants, Terry, besides the dental program?
The only other, there is another global grant that we're involved in, and that is we partnered with a district in India near Calcutta, and we provided $25,000 toward the purchase of multiple dialysis units. So again, with the way the global grants work, you have to give to get. So I'm in the process of building relationships with other districts and clubs around the world so that when it comes time for us to do a global grant for West Virginia, we have a partner that's willing to give back to us. So the project that we got involved with this year was a dialysis I think it was to purchase 2 or 3 additional dialysis machines and maybe additional beds at a couple clinics in Dhambad, which is near Calcutta. And that will be used to provide some desperately needed dialysis for people that just don't have access to it right now. So that's what we're doing with global grants right now. And then there's my grant that I did a couple years ago that was an incoming global grant. Obviously, the Indy one was an outgoing global grant. That's the only 2 that I know that are recent. There's a couple that are ongoing that we're involved with. I just saw a report coming through for, I think it's a blood bank that, I'm not sure who the initial person was that started that, but we do have some grants that we're involved with on a global nature that are just ongoing and in process right now.
Could I just make a comment? I just attended a Rotary Club meeting in Boca Raton, Florida, with a former member of our club who had my daughter present a program on building wells in Sierra Leone. Our club did 8 wells on a global grant about 12 years ago, our club and district in the northern part of the state. I'd like to see us put together some kind of a committee that has a long-term interest in and looks at our participation in global grants or in grants generally. I don't have a good sense of our involvement being communicated real well throughout our districts. In attending this meeting in Boca Raton, Florida, I have hooked up with a large, very wealthy district, which is really interested in doing a half dozen things, including sending a couple of the folks from Sierra Leone to peace academies, including the Rotary Peace Program that's working all over the world. And just a suggestion. This is a bunch of people interested in grants. I'd like to think about some kind of better communication about how our grants outreach works. I've been a Rotarian for many years, and I've never been able to sort out exactly where we are sometimes.
Okay, no, that's fine, Jim. That's a great idea. And we'll work to try to put a committee together and a process to, better communicate, how we're allocating that money. That's great. Thanks, Jim.
I think there are people in the district who have connections or interests, and it would help us kind of make it a little more personal to find out what those are and where those are, people that are working in various places.
Jim,
I found out that we have a district peace representative, and I already reached out to her because this group in Florida, which is trying to involve us, is already planning to spend some money sending a couple of people to peace training programs. So it could be very exciting for us.
International service.
Sean, would the international service chair, which would be Mark, would that have anything to do with what Jim would need?
I think that new movement towards having an international service chair within the districts, particularly in our zone 33, could very much include that kind of a conversation. And I'll go one step further with my answer and tell you that before COVID hit, I was able to attend the International Assembly as an incoming governor in training. And that was attended by the district governor-elect from every district in the world. There was 530 of us there together. And we did a lot of exchanging of business cards and pins and ideas and contact information. So I hope to make it very easy for everybody and get it, promote it, published however necessary, and find additional resource so that we don't have to look terribly hard for global partners to team up with. There are people out there that are interested in doing that already, and all they're looking for is somebody here in the States to join forces with. And anybody that would like for me to help, stick my nose in it and involved in the process to that extent, I'd be glad to. Just reach out to me and let me know. I'll give you everything I can get.
And Jim, I'll connect you with Mark, and you two can communicate as to what you would need, and maybe we could put together some kind of section on the website as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Sean, or is that?
I have no new ones in the queue.
Okay.
Other than I'll point out that Eric Anderson of the Bluefield Club has offered up his connection with a partner district in the U.S. Golden Triangle, LA Rotary, that is interested in partnering with West Virginia already. So Jim, you might want to make note of that, or anybody else. Mark included, and put that in our hip pocket for future reference for sure.
And like I said, I have a great relationship with the Rotary Club of Chandigarh. They're my partner for the dental grant, and they're willing to really partner with us on anything that has to do with children or health, anything along those lines. They're an extremely wealthy club, and they do medical missions every year in different countries in Africa, and so they're willing to help us and come alongside us like they did for the dental grant. And there's a lot of people on this call that know people, and basically it just has to be somebody outside of the United States that you can partner with to do a global grant. And global grants, remember, go both ways. They can come into our state, or they can go impact somebody internationally. And we want to do a mix of both, because there's a lot of needs in West Virginia that we can really make a significant impact with global grants. So I want you to think, when I say global grant, I want you to think large project in West Virginia with an international partner, because that's what we want to try to look at and develop and focus on in the coming years. So I appreciate everybody being here this morning. I appreciate your time and questions, your interactions. We will get that presentation out to you guys that requested it, and also on the website. And I think we're going to take a short break here, and then at 10 o'clock, Jeff Tibio from the grant committee will walk you through, for those of you that are actually going to be involved with applying for a district grant, Jeff will walk you through the process and show you the forms and show what needs to be done. So again, thanks for your time today. And if there's anything that we can do to help you guys make an impact in your community, that's what we're here for. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. And before everybody drops off the call, let me point out that all these different sessions are going to be recorded. And while we hope that doesn't cause people to just rely on the recording to gain the knowledge and the training opportunity, Mark Branchiaroli, our district webmaster, and his wife Bonnie, who is one of the co-chairs for Public Image, and Amanda Ream of South Charleston, who's the other co-chair for Public Image, have recently gotten all the kinks worked out of this district having its first ever YouTube channel. And this and things like the installation last night and some of the other sessions that we've had for pets and different things are all going to be posted to that YouTube channel very soon. Once it's flipped active, you'll get an ever-loved P-mail from somebody letting you know that it's out there and how to tune into it on the net. With that said, I appreciate everybody being here. I think I've got a pretty good, accurate list of everybody that made it. I appreciate that as well. Terry's correct. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back in at 10 to continue to talk about grants from the aspect of how to apply from them. Our Assistant Governor, Jeff Tibio, and Grants Committee member as well, is going to lead that discussion from his palatial estate there on the lake. And you can use the same link if you decide you want to log out for now and come back at 10. You can use the same link to tie into all the sessions today. If you want to just stay on the call, that's fine. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll get started again right at 10 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready and I feel more comfortable. I have written grants, for different organizations and have reviewed grants for different one organization. So I do have some experience there, but I do need to feel a lot more confident in this process. And I think that the best way for me to learn that is to do one. And then I'd be able to maybe help, like Cindy said, maybe if there is that second round. So just kind of, Cindy, just take note of my name, and my email was in the chat box from the first one. I can even stick my name in it. So if there is a second round.
Okay. I've pushed the record button, which doesn't necessarily mean anything other than we're recording. You all can continue to talk. I've got 10:03. We've got some other people coming in the room. I'll try to let them in as we go along, but in the spirit of trying to be true to my word and stay on schedule, Unless anybody's got any other questions before we get started, this is the second session of our first annual virtual online district assembly. And what we're going to do is we're going to resume the discussion of grants at this point. We're going to talk about the actual application process. I'm going to, again, get out of the way and let those who are better versed in such topics take the lead. And for purposes of this hour, that would be our Assistant Governor and self-proclaimed longtime district grants guru, my friend AC2G, Jeff DeCibio.
Thank you, Sean. I don't know about the self-proclaimed part, but maybe Sean proclaimed. I claim to be a guru of nothing. However, I'm happy to be here to help present. I want this portion of the program to be significantly more interactive. So as you have questions, please feel free to chime in. Of course, let's try not to step on each other while if multiple people have multiple questions at the same time. But this is the nuts and bolts of what you learned in the last session with Terry. And it's simply going through the process of what you have to do to complete the application form through the final submission. And it's really not as difficult or onerous as it seems like. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and step right on to the Sean, do you have copies of the forms that you can display, sir?
I do, Jeff. I have them ready to screen share. You just tell me which one you want to see first, and I'll try to get it thrown
Start
up.
with the application, pal.
Okay, give me 1 second.
So for all the people on the call, these are always a work in progress that we always try to revamp every year to try to figure out how to streamline this process to make it as simple for you as possible. We also try to make it as easy to complete as possible because we don't want clubs to feel any concern about submitting a district grant. We want them to embrace the process because, in fact, it is the money that we've donated that has come back to us that we're putting out to our entire district. So we want to make it easy for projects to happen, and thus our attempts at streamlining the process and making it easier. So just as an overview while we're getting it pulled up, maybe that's me, but I don't have it on my screen yet.
I've got it shared. Can anybody see it?
I see your main screen.
I just see a menu.
I can see it.
There
Okay,
it comes.
Here, I'll try it again.
Now they are on the website online too, Sean.
The new ones are on already?
Uh-huh.
Oh, great. I didn't know that was going to be able to happen by this morning.
Well, Mark's been working on it as he's been listening to us for the last hour.
God bless him. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep, there's
Mark's a multitasker. He's
He is.
far more advanced than us. So, again, if you have any questions going through this, please feel free to just shout and let me know. So this is the initial form that you will get. As Bonnie just stated, they are up and available on the website as of today, it appears. You should be able to access these and walk through the process. Most of these questions are very simple and straightforward. As you can see.
Oh, sorry, Jeff, but I would wait till tomorrow. We haven't tested them yet. As far as anybody filling one out today.
Right. Okay. Well,
I always like to
as
test.
of let's call it July 1st, because that will be Sean's
cool.
technically first day. So July 1st should be active. That, Bonnie, is better. So as of July 1st, we can assume that these will be active, and you guys will be able to download and complete these forms and send them in to the contact information that's on the sheet. So first things first, let's look at the first line. Obviously, the project. You have a project name that is out there. Let's just call it a scholarship program or a dictionary project, whatever you want to put in there. That's all you need to include in your first line, whatever your project is. Second line, what club you're sending it from. And the remainder of the stuff there, as you can see, is contact information for you. This will be the one who is spearheading the project will be the one that we want listed as the primary contact.
Hey,
We
Jeff,
don't want to.
can we stop 1 second here? Could you please make your view on the, is it the Microsoft Word or the PDF? Can you enlarge in that? Because I'm really having a hard time seeing it.
That's Sean. I don't know what to do, Sean. That's on you, buddy.
Keep going, Sean. Ah, getting closer. Thank you. Now I can read.
How's that? Okay.
Oh, so much better. Thank you so
Great.
much.
And Jeff, Eric's got his hand up raised for a question as well.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, I'm on DACDB. Are the files going to be stored in the secure file areas of the district downloads, or will they be stored somewhere else? How can I see these forms on my PC while you're doing it?
All right. I could only catch what he was saying. He was cutting out for me.
Bonnie, that might be a question best asked
Mhm.
to you.
Go to rotarydistrict754.org. And then go to programs. And the first pull down menu is district grant program. Go halfway down the page and you will see the links to all the forms.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm trying to screen share some of that right now.
So, Eric, I know in the past that most people have gone to DACDB. That was before we had as comprehensive a diff site as Mark and Bonnie have created for us. You will find almost everything you need except for the day-to-day operation stuff on our website now. So I would suggest to all people involved, go there to our district website before you go to DACDB to search for forms and documents and things of the like, because they have done an exemplary job with this.
I would agree wholeheartedly, Jeff.
When we were planning the district website, I was throwing out ideas and they had already done them. So it was amazing.
Thank you, Jeff.
Any other questions before we get back to the sheet? Can everybody see now? I'm going to assume that yes. So obviously you got the contact information as I was saying, and we want to have the primary person be the individual that has the most knowledge, or if you're heading the project listed there, because let's just assume it would be a club member who is doing the application with the approval of the club. It may be the case that the president doesn't know everything about the project. So if we have to do follow-up questions or information, want to speak with the person that's in the know, we want to have that contact person that's there. All right. So the next part is part 2. As you can see there, scroll down just a tad more, Sean. And that is the description of the project proposal. So typically in the past, you may have seen this in its previous form, which was individual questions, which are similar formatted to the final report. But we think it may be a better idea to allow people to write in a free form manner here so they can really do what they want to. However, ultimately, we want it to be as short and descriptive as possible. Rotary actually only allows us a finite amount of space to be able to report these things. So we don't necessarily need a narrative what's happening. We bullet points and discussion and brevity is your friend here. So try to maintain a more brief version rather than a lengthy version of your descriptions and things when you submit through here. So essentially you guys can see what you're doing. You have to name one of your areas of focus, ideally. And now we have 7, as Sean mentioned in the last session. The second step will be the implementation of your plan, and that's simply how you're to implement whatever you do. Ownership, who will be the final owner of the project and equipment and things of that nature. If partnering with someone in community that's going to maintain a project and it be the Rotary Club or a civic charity. Obviously, Rotary International requires an expenditure budget. So what we have to do is get a detailed list of everything that you do, along with your receipts that go along with that, because we have to provide a copy of all those to Rotary International if asked on request. So what we do is we maintain those records for 3 years. It used to be 5. I think they've condensed it down to 3 now. Maintain those records for 3 years in case we ever have an audit on anything that we have had submitted past as a budget.
Excuse me, Jeff.
The 5th step there, submit your budget, of course.
Are we,
Go ahead.
Are we set up now to digitally retain these things so that they're going to be online and nobody has to keep anything else? Lonnie?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, that's good.
Hey, Jeff, you might want to go to cut your video. You're breaking up just a little bit on the audio, maybe a bandwidth issue.
Gotcha. If I can figure out how to cut my video, hang on 1 second. There we go. All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Dan, I also got your email. I'll be responding soon. All right. The 6th part is the start date. So the reason for this is you have to submit and get approval for your project prior to being able to obtain reimbursement. So we have to submit to Rotary International a list of all projects, which is why we're advancing the deadline date for project submission to earlier in the year. So you cannot have already complete. Well, now, again, this will only apply to this year. I think with COVID, they are allowing for retroactive application. But in most instances, the project has to be in place and running. I'm sorry, I apologize. You have to have your application in and approved before you can begin, because we have to have that approval from Rotary International that it is a valid project that falls into the guidelines of having a project that can be grant worthy and grant approved. Okay, so make sure to get the application in prior to starting your project. Make sure it's in far in advance so we can get approval from the committee as well as Rotary International and let you know that you can go ahead and start your project at that time. The completion date, again, I think you guys probably heard in the last section with Terry. Completion date, you will have to submit that final report along with your evidence of expenses and your revenue budget, which you'll see shortly. Typically, the rule of thumb, as Terry said, is 30 days after. However, the true deadline is for the entire year is 5/30 of 2021, so the end of May. Okay. Sean, can you scroll down a little bit more, sir? The next part is other participating organizations. And this is simply a list of anybody else that has participated with you. Oftentimes you will partner with someone that is a local nonprofit, a local government entity, anything of that nature to help facilitate the project. So simply Rotary needs to know who all is a partner on this, on the venture with you. So that's the reason for this. All right, next part is the project committee. As you guys can see, and we kind of touched on a little bit before, not all members of the club are going to be knowledgeable as to what your project is, potentially. Maybe that is the case. However, that we have typically found that there are a handful of Rotarians that are in the know. We want to have the contact information here of your committee so that we know who we can talk to and have conversations with if need be. Very straightforward. And there's the fill in the blank information for you. So number 5, we're accomplishing that today. You're getting your qualification by attending this training seminar, so you should be good to go. Also know that we need corroboration, and it can't just be one individual that is submitting on behalf of the entire club. We have to know that it is the decision of the entire club to be able to do this project. Therefore, we have the multiple signatures that are on there, including either the president or the president-elect to sign the MOU. Next section, Sean. This is simply a confirmation that you will adhere to all the things that are listed below. You guys can read these as you go through them. We don't necessarily need to step through them. If you want to take a second and go through them, we can. It's simply an affirmation that what you're offering is in fact the truth, which is of course the first tenet of Rotary anyway. So we know that we're all operating in that same vein. So we need obviously the name of the club in the first line, the date, and then a signature of the club president, as well as their printed name, so that we can have the corroboration that it is a submitted grant on behalf of the entire club. Okay. So you guys can see the application form. We were going through it. We'll talk about these as we go through. Basically, as we have discussed, and you may have heard a few minutes ago before we started, the first round of allocations, we typically try to set a maximum of $1,000 for your first request. This is simply to give almost all clubs a bite at the apple. We try to be as equitable as we can in distributing these funds. So we don't want to be able to have one club come in with a $30,000 project and say, hey, we want $15,000.
A little late getting on because Sean had a gap in letting people in, but she was on.
I'm sorry? In any event, okay, so that's part of the discussion there. So that's where we are. We're still in section 7. And again, as Terry stated earlier, this is a section that is basically what Terry was talking about earlier. And what I mentioned a moment ago, you have to get approval before you do your project. You have to be able to complete all sections of this what we're going through today to be able to get your ultimate the funding once you finalize everything. Okay, so you need to complete all sections of this application form that we just went through, and then you can attach, because obviously there's not enough space in the form listed above, your proposal that includes all that information that we discussed a few moments ago. If appropriate, you can attach a letter of support from any affiliated organization, as was listed above as well. And of course, the signatures that we talked about. So once you get all this done, that is the full completion of the grant application. You need to submit it either to Cindy Colson, or as Bonnie is now telling us, she has the ability to hold them online for us. Okay. Any questions so far?
I would like to make a comment. Once you fill out the online application, it will probably go to not only Cindy, but will also send a copy to your inbox as well.
And archives itself
And it archives
automatically on the cloud.
automatically,
And I get a copy.
which we then put in the list for the committee.
If I could throw in something right here, just a second. Jane, I think that was your voice I heard about somebody coming on late. Could you repeat that for me? I didn't get everything that you said. Maybe not.
Sorry, no, sorry. That actually, I was talking about something else, didn't realize I wasn't muted, and it is not pertinent here at all. So
Okay, sorry.
I apologize.
No, not at all. I thought if you had something you wanted to add that I would know what it was.
Nope, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. We do have a couple of hands raised, Jeff, if you've got a
Yep.
minute for a question. Eric Anderson
go.
has, I see his hand raised first, and then Ed Westfall from Grafton after that, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure,
My hand
Eric,
was-
go ahead.
My hand was raised previously. You answered the question I had previously. It's,
Okay,
you
excellent.
just didn't clear it.
Got it.
Thank you.
I've got you clear now, Eric. Ed, did you
Thanks,
still have
sir.
a question?
Yes, and my question may be for Bonnie or Mark, but when I completed or submitted the final report in the second round of grants for the last year, I did not get a copy back of that report. So should I request that from John Powell or from Bonnie or Mark?
Ed, what club are you with?
Grafton,
And would that be the round 2?
round 2.
Okay, I have here that the final report did go through and that we did put it up on the list, but you did not receive a copy?
Right. When it, normally what happened before, an email would come back to me with a PDF of the form,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not get that, so I don't have a copy for my file. That's all.
Okay, I'll make sure that Mark sends you that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all I see, Jeff.
Okay, buddy. If you'd like to go ahead and move on to the final report page, we can do that.
And I'll make sure to make it nice and big too. There you are, sir.
Thank you, buddy. So once again, you guys can see that it begins obviously with the descriptive information and your contact information. So we start off with a Rotary Club. You name your club. At that point, you should probably have a district grant number that has been assigned to you. We will let you know that that's the case. You will have the title that you used previously. Please don't change the title because then we may be confused, because some of us are easily confused. The beginning date and the completion date. Remember, this is the final report, so this should be done after the fact. Okay? Also remember that this is the final report to be completed after you have already submitted or simultaneously submit this report with your evidence of expenses and applicable receipts and things like that. So we would like to know where the money went, how it was expensed, evidence that it was actually paid out, and accompany that with the receipts if there are any to go along with that. Okay? And essentially that's what's there in the red. So let's move on down. So the project description and details, this is simply another brief summary of exactly what we had from the first one. We want to make it as simultaneous or as seamless as possible. So you're going to do the description of the process or the project in the first section as you had before. In number 2, you will list how many Rotarians participated in the project and what their roles were. So here's the question, number 3, that everyone has a question about. How many non-Rotarians benefited from this project? Oftentimes, this may be tough to quantify because you may be partnering with a local nonprofit to create a space in a park or something of that nature, and you'll never know how many hundreds of thousands of people may sit on the bench that you make. I know that's not a great example, but it's the first one that came to mind. Sorry. So again, it doesn't have to be such a hard and fast number that it's quantifiable, but we would like it to be something that you can show has advantage to more than just a couple of people, either Rotarians or I'm sorry, in your community or the intended beneficiaries that are not Rotarians in this situation. For example, if you work with a women's shelter and you do something for their home, you can list that all the ladies in the women's shelter benefit from that. I know there's gonna be questions about this one, so I'll pause here and see if there are any.
None in the queue.
Wow, okay. Well, that's
I
great.
actually have my hand raised. It's no big deal. Question is regarding a project we already did for COVID-19. So in the project name, do I specify COVID-19? Because the application process is quite different if we can get submitted for a project we've already completed. Can you please discuss that?
Yeah, there will be some different rules that apply to those, I'm quite sure. I'll be perfectly honest, I have not received any of the information with regard to that. I'm not sure if Sean has been on calls with that. I know that I personally have not. And if anybody else would like to expand on that, then that would be very helpful. But for me, I can't really discuss that in any great detail.
Okay, thanks.
Eric, can you ask that question again, and I'll do my best to answer whichever part of it I can.
Sure. I'm filling out a grants application during the meeting, and for a project that we completed and was reported for the past year, we gave 70 radios to local residents of a nursing home that we sponsor. So I know our club spent about $1,700. I'm just going on and filling it out, but I don't know how to specify its different status because COVID-19. Last hour, you said a COVID-19 project can be done and then submitted. So I need to know how to differentiate this grant application with something that is going to go through the normal district grants process.
Okay, I know the answer. It's not mine, but I think I know the answer. And Terry, I see you're on the call. If you heard Eric's question, I think that a lot of that COVID differentiation information has been routed to you as the DRFC.
I don't have a complete information right now, but I would request that if you are doing a COVID-19 project that's already happened, that you make that evident somehow in the title if you want to put COVID-19 somewhere on the form, so that the grant committee knows that it's something related to COVID-19, because obviously you've already done it for the case that you're talking about. So yeah, just put it identified on the form as COVID-19 related. And I'm sure we'll be getting more guidance after the first of the year. That's the only guidance I have right now, is that they'll look back to March 15th. But I'm sure after the first of the year, we'll get more guidance, and then we will communicate that to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ed, I see you've got your hand up. Is that from before or now?
Sorry, it was from before. Thought I had lowered it.
Not a problem. Carol, you have your hand up as well. Do you still have a question?
Yes, I do. Okay, if you could put up the copy of the grant report again, that would help me.
Can you see it?
Yes. Okay. So I get that we may not be able to give a really good number of the non-Rotarians. Long-term community impacts of the project, that's kind of, you haven't really talked about that yet, but I'm sitting here thinking, wow, for like a total of $2,000, that's going to be a little bit hard to really talk about the long-term community impacts of the project. Is that just kind of, you're going to be able to give your best narrative? And then on the next one down, the cooperating non-Rotarian organization, is that a separate letter from what was originally submitted for the MOU, for the grant application itself?
So let's go ahead and move on to those, as long as no one else has any more questions about number 3 and we're able to advance forward. So again, your statement with regard to number 4 is perfect. We understand that it may be difficult to define exactly what it is, but this is a place where you would include a bit of a narrative. Again, it doesn't have to be voluminous. It doesn't have to be 5 pages of a narrative. We just want to know generally what is the long-term community impact and the value basically of what you're doing and why you're doing it. That is essentially what we need for Rotary International if they ask. Otherwise, if they don't see value in the project or understand why you see the value, then it may become an issue with why later on down the line, if they have approved or haven't approved. So essentially what you may view as the intended benefits may fall within the lines of the Rotary guidelines. However, viewing it as a third party who's not boots on the ground there in the situation to understand what the project truly is, they may not view it in the same vein that you do. So this is your chance to make people see it as you see it more so than anything else.
Jeff, can I throw something in on that too for Carol's benefit? Maybe, the final report, while important, is a document that's created after the fact. I'm going to guess that in the application, you have already identified to some extent the answer to this question, and your grant application would not have been approved were your answer to number 4 in the final report have certain shortcomings. Is that fair to assume?
That's correct.
Okay. Carol, does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions about that one?
Bonnie, well, Carol had asked you a question about number 5 as well. If you want to answer that when you go to it, that's
I
fine.
will.
But Bonnie has just sent me a chat window that she's got a question as well.
Okay. About number 5?
It doesn't say. Bonnie, are you there?
Okay. All right. I got a message from Jane. She had a question to me for a COVID-19 application. Would we use the old 2019-20, or could we use after July 1 to 2021?
She should find that they are virtually identical at this point.
And I was actually talking about applying today. We were requested to do this, so I need this year's forms, and that's what I'm looking for, is a copy, because I don't have one.
Okay, because we have the final report for 1920 still up because that's needed. I'm not sure whether Mark retained the application for 1920. So that is why I'm asking the question.
We can get her one. Don't worry about it.
Well, that leads me to a question I have. Does Gary, maybe you know the answer to this, is there a separate COVID-related grant application, or do you just indicate that on an existing grant application?
I don't know that for sure, but I would assume we use our existing paperwork and just indicate it's COVID. Like I said, they're not giving me a lot of more details other than the date that you can go back to. So for any grant that you're applying for in the coming year to get reimbursed for, please use the current forms, which will be available July 1st. As we get more clarifying information, we will sure to get that out to you guys.
Okay, Jane, does that answer your question?
It does indeed. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to number 5. If there is a cooperating non-Rotarian organization involved, you have to essentially state what their role was, and you can get a letter from them defining what that was as well and their level of participation. Can it be the same as the first letter? I believe was your question, though. Is that right? From before?
My question before was that, does it have to be a separate letter?
We have never made it be a separate letter to this point.
Okay.
That would really be up to the new grants chairperson. If she would like to mandate that, then we can. But to this point, that has not been our.
Jeff,
Yes, ma'am.
our whole idea is to try to keep this process as streamlined and as easy as we can for everyone. So we would not need a new letter as long as that the organization did work with you and do what you said they were going to do. I mean, I think that would be enough there. And also, you know, Terry is so right. Please use this new form, even if you're requesting old ones, you know, money from last year through COVID, because that will be helpful to us because it'll come out of this pot of money. Does that help any?
I think that's perfect.
I
So
agree.
that clarifies the fact that she is going to maintain as we have. A new letter is not necessary. And also to Jane's point regarding the question, which form to use. All right. So this is essentially the overview of what your financial information was for the project. In the first line, you simply state the amount of grants funds that you received, that you were awarded. Okay. In addition to that, if there are any other outside sources of income that were received, you list who donated those in lines 2, 3, 4, and 5 with the corresponding amounts on the far right side for a total project income calculated in that last line on the far right. This project expenses portion which is the next one. If Sean can scroll down just a tad. This is simply to help you track what your expenses are as well as receipts. So you can list who the vendor was, what the expense was, and the amount. And if you list them on there, then you are able to have the receipt that matches to be submitted along with it. This again is the overview, but we need all the substance that goes with it, which would be your receipts and all expenditures. Just like above, you go through each of the lines, how many ever are necessary, and then you do your total calculation in the bottom right corner. Any questions about that?
I have a comment.
Okay.
If you're using the online form, which I would recommend, you do have the capability to uploading multiple PDFs. Each one of these fields here are a separate field for a separate receipt. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions about this portion? And again, at the bottom, just like before, you have the certifying signature, the date, the name, and whatever position the club member that is signing holds. And then submit it either online or to Cindy here. Any questions regarding that?
Yeah, this is just probably a dumb question, but when you're talking about submitting these online, do you mean that we download the forms, fill them out, and then just PDF them back? Or is there an actual fillable form online that we use and then with electronic signatures?
There is an actual online form with an electronic signature. Everything is secure, easy. It's very easy to use. Now, what we do, there is a little notation on the top of each form file that if you want to download to work your grant before you sit down to submit it for online capability to get it to Cindy, then you're welcome to do that, which I did my first grant this past year, and that's what I did, and it worked really well. Does that answer your question?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay.
And I've got that on the screen right now too, Carol. If you see, it's 1920's final report form on our district website, but you can see where you can fill in the areas directly online, where you can attach the various correspondence that goes along with those items, where you can fill in your partners and their contributions. Same way with the receipts for the expenses, and where you can electronically sign.
And also too, I would like to add that if you have any problems whatsoever, Mark is always available to help you in any way. So I don't know if his email is anywhere there, but you could email Cindy, and then if it's a question she cannot answer, then she can forward that to Mark.
Is Mark not listed as the webmaster or some contact information on the website itself?
I'm not sure. He will be. He will be. I'm not sure whether we have that completed as far as having all the emails connected to the leadership team. But I don't think he's listed anywhere in the actual grant section. And I'll leave that up to Sean and to Cindy as to whether they want that information there somewhere.
I think we probably should include Mark if there are questions as people are filling these out. There are some people that kind of wait till the last minute and don't want to have to take a lot of time to try to sort things down. So that's something that we'll add on this final.
Okay.
So guys, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
While we were speaking, I did the report that we're discussing for the project we've just done for COVID. There wasn't a place to print it. I completed the electronic signature and then submitted. However, where do I find the form I just submitted so that I can edit it or print it and report it to the committees in my club? Or it's not very intuitive.
Okay, did you receive a copy of it in your email?
I did not.
Okay, I'm gonna get Mark, okay?
It's quite all right. My email address, I put it in wrong. It's early and I haven't had coffee. So I put E. Anderson at bluefield.edu, and it's E. Anderson. It included my middle initial. So it was my mistake, but now the form has gone into Ether, and I have no idea how to correct it.
All right, Mark's coming and maybe he can answer your question because I have a hard time too. Now I will get the copy of it in my email, but because it is electronically secure, it will not let you make a PDF or print what was sent through. But Mark has a way of doing that for me, and maybe he can explain that.
I have a question if you have a chance.
Yes, ma'am.
Eric?
On the
Yes.
on the top of this page where you're talking about expenses, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up.
Are you, go ahead.
It says something about the district grant money that you got that you should report, but you haven't gotten it yet, right?
That's correct. I have not gotten it yet. I mean, that's correct. That's incorrect.
No, well, what I mean is when I'm filling out my report, like I have one that I need to fill out this weekend for the second round of grants for this year. Do I put if we had spent any district funds there? Is that what that's about? Or is it what we're expecting to get from the district? Does that make sense?
Eric, this actually isn't a question for you. She's asking us. I think she's just confused as to who she's
No
talking
problem.
to. So
No problem,
you're,
sir.
that's all right. No problem. Just wanted to clarify. So you're speaking, ma'am, of the very first line, the District 7545 grants received. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you should have already been approved for an amount. Do you have that approved amount?
Yes, I mean, I think it's 375, whatever was given for the second round.
That's right.
That's accurate, yes. So that should be the number that you put in that top, in that first line that corresponds to number 1, district grants received.
Okay, and even though you haven't received it, actually.
Correct, correct, yes. It's not technically received. It is money that has definitely been allocated for you, but you're not going to truly receive any funds until you submit. So yes, that's accurate.
Okay, thanks very much.
So that will be something we probably revisit using the word receive there to try to clear that up a little bit. Sorry, and
Or even put to be received.
correct.
Or promise.
There you go. It's good.
Promised. There we go.
I've been
A
making
work in progress.
I have been making notes as we go through these forms and reading every word, and I've found a couple of things that we may want to change before they get too active on the website. But I'll get with Bonnie and Mark about that, and if they don't mind making a couple of adjustments, we'll be in good shape.
May I add to that?
Okay, could we go back to Eric's problem?
Hang on, Bonnie. Let's go ahead and get the other question.
Oh, okay.
No, I've also got somebody with their hand up.
Yeah, Jim Culberson. On both, we're doing little small revisions. I've been reviewing these things for several years. At the top of both the application and the final report, we asked for a district grant number or some such thing. And to the best of my knowledge and last year's chair, that doesn't mean anything, and we could scrap that. People ask about it. It's at the very top of the application.
Of the application.
Yeah, we mentioned it. Ideally, we're supposed to have one, but I don't think he got around to assigning a number to it last year.
Yep, I think if we did that, and I think the last question, it's a good idea to reword that because it's not money received, it's promised.
Gotcha.
Or you could say money approved.
Yeah, fine.
Work in progress.
As far as a number, does RI require that number? I mean, is it a number that the
It's a different number that has no bearing on that we assign it as a district grant number.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well,
Now,
Mark-
Eric had a question or something, I guess. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a question. Each club can expect to receive approximately $1,000. Are we required to do that all in one grant, or could we have 2 small grants that would equal that amount?
I think that question may have been answered in the first session, Irvin, that Jim Culberson had asked about, are you able to apply for more than one grant? There was another question about which one being primary, which one being secondary. I'm not on the grants committee, but I'll bet Cindy and her committee have a plan that if you ask for a $1,000 grant, it would be treated the same way perhaps as if you asked for 2 $500 grants. I'll defer to the committee on that.
Yeah, I can comment. I've been reviewing for the last several years, and that's a really good question because I think the tendency of the committee for at least the last 2 years, because 2 years ago we were in separate districts, is to go around and do one grant per club first, as opposed to $1,000 first. So that really should be cleared up somehow. I don't know how the committee will act next year, but typically we've gone around and done a first grant, try to get everybody one grant before the second action. I don't know how to answer that.
The issue that we've had in the past is that if you are able to submit, let's just assume that you would have only 2 that you would submit in general. Well, that's not a good example. So how should I say this? I'll tell you what, we'll have to leave it up to Cindy and we'll have a discussion about that. And maybe what we'll do is we'll send an email about it. In the past, we have done a grant up to $1,000 simply because it was onerous to review multiple grants and include them in the whole as a package. We weren't certain that it was as equitable doing it that way. But in the grand scheme of the dollar figure, it does seem more equitable because the smaller clubs are not able to do it. So it's been a subjective decision, but we'll let Cindy, we'll get with Cindy and talk about it and let her decide how we would like to do that going forward.
In our situation, one of the things that we've been doing is a dictionary grant. Well, we don't need to buy $2,000 worth of dictionaries to give one dictionary, to each student in our school. So therefore, we'd like to be able to, that money that we're not using for the dictionaries, be able to use for another project.
Of course.
We will get together as a committee and we'll make some kind of decision on that.
Okay.
So this is good that we're having this discussion today.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
In the spirit of time, James Dowdy's had his hand up for quite some time waiting to ask a question. James, if you're still on the call, I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask what it is. You're likely muted, James. Are you still there? Well, he may have left us. And Jeff, we've got about 5 more minutes left in this session. Did you want to discuss anything about the MOU itself?
The MOU itself is very straightforward. It is simply a requirement that you have to have it submitted. Ideally, you should submit it at the same time that you submit your application, and it's very straightforward. Again, we've reviewed all the substance that's in it. It used to be much more difficult to achieve because we applied global grant standards to this, specifically with regard to bank accounts. However, we have trimmed that back considerably to make it more feasible on a small grant, local grant level. So the MOU is simply an agreement between the club and Rotary International that basically outlines the expectations of everybody involved and some general guidelines with regard to how you do the accounting and the banking. And it's simply a statement that you agree to adhere to all these standards contained within.
I would like to go back to Eric's problem. Is Eric still there? I assume he is not, so.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I just.
Well, okay. Mark is here to explain what you need to do.
Okay.
I understand that the issue is that you can't print it out when you get your copy in the email. The reason for that is for security, because these are legal, secure forms that have been signed, so that it keeps it secure. The easy thing to do is that you fill it out on our website, and it's right there online, and right before you click submit, just hit print, and you'll have your copy.
Yes, sir. May I?
Another way. Another way.
My,
Wait, hold on for a second. The second way is much easier. Wait for it to come in, and then just simply do a screenshot, and it'll print.
I need to rephrase the question, sir.
Sure.
I put an incorrect email address in. So the verification for the electronic signature did not go to the correct email address. So the form itself is not, it's in limbo, and there's no way to get back to the form to make the correction for the correct email address, and my own stuttering fingers to get the right information in, and I'm not sure how to do it.
Well, there's always 2 or 3 alternatives. Number one, I can get into the back end to see if it's there.
Okay.
In all likelihood, it's not. But I don't mind doing that. Send me an email with particulars. I'm sure you can find my email. If not, it's markbonniesue@gmail.com. But the other thing is you can't change it because it's not legal yet. It's not bona fide. So you'd have to start over and submit a new form with the correct email address if I can't find it for you.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to look though.
Okay, I will be happy to start it over if that's what has to be done. But you said Mark Bonnie Sue?
Yep, Mark Bonnie Sue. This is Bonnie Sue and I'm Mark. So it's Mark
No.
Bonnie. email. Hers is Bonnie
Eric,
Sue.
I put that in the chat window just now, Mark's email address.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
And you know, I feel your pain about starting over again, because I overheard that you folks are making changes on the form itself. I spent 2 or 3 days on this, putting all that stuff in. And now if you start on the basic form again, I have to start all over again. And I feel your pain.
All right, thank you.
Folks, listen, it's 10:58. Everybody might want to take a quick break of some sort before we start the next session at 11. If you've got any more questions. Yeah, Cindy.
I just wanted to thank everybody for their suggestions for today. And if you have any more, feel free to send them to me in an email. And you know why I'm unmuted all the time, because I've got a barky dog.
That's all right, Cindy. John Bolt, you had asked to, you had a question. I don't know that it pertains to this topic at all. If
Well,
it does,
it's more a general question, but given the time, I suspect the answer is going to be long and involved. So I'll just call up and either ask you, Sean, or Terry.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to give me a buzz or an email, either one. If I can't answer it, John, I'll make sure I find somebody that's got the answer.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Folks, thank you very much. Jeff, Terry, Bonnie, Mark, Jim, Cindy, everybody else that was involved with the answers. Thank you. Everybody that asked the questions, thank you as well. We're early in the process, so I'm sure we're going to be able to iron out any of the snags that may be present yet. We've got technically at least 4 days to do that, I guess. So again, if you have any more questions, feel free to shoot those to me or to Cindy as the chair, or anybody else that you think may be able to appropriately answer your question. With that said, let's just take a quick break, and then we'll move on to our session being led by our district membership chair, Becky Hahn, here in just a few minutes.